Have you ever gotten to the end of a day, or a week, or a season and realized that somewhere along the way you stopped asking for help entirely? Not because no one offered, not because you didn't need it, but because somewhere, quietly, you decided that needing it meant something about you, that it made the responsibility less yours, that it made you less of the caregiver you were supposed to be. Today, we're talking about why caregivers stop asking for help, what actually drives it, what it costs your body over time, and what changes when you finally let yourself be supported. This one is personal. Stay with me. If you're tired of holding it together in hard rooms, appointments, hospital days, and service systems, and then crashing afterwards, you're in the right place. Hello, caregiver to caregiver, I'm really glad you're here. I'm Michelle. As a caregiver and advocate, I know firsthand what it's like to become the walking medical encyclopedia, to fight for continuity so you don't have to repeat your story, and to leave the room thinking, I should have said that differently. No pressure, no perfect routines, and no toxic positivity. Just one gentle reset and one practical next step so you can have calmer days, clearer words, and advocate without self-abandoning. Let's take a breath and start. And your reset has started for today. Before we get into today's episode, if you're in a season where you're carrying a lot and you're ready for something deeper than a podcast episode, I want you to know that the Oasis Signature Program exists. It's a 12-week program where we do this work together in a cohort with me directly. I'll tell you more at the end, but if you already know, the link is in the show notes. I want to tell you something I don't talk about lightly. There was a point in my caregiving journey where my body stopped asking politely. It wasn't a dramatic moment. It wasn't one day where everything collapsed at once. It was more like a slow accumulation, a build. The kind that happens so gradually you don't notice it until you're standing in your kitchen one morning and you can't remember the last time you felt rested. Not tired, but okay. Actually rested. My shoulders had been up around my ears for so long I'd stopped noticing they were there. My sleep wasn't sleep. It was a lighter version of awake. The kind where your body lies down but your nervous system stays standing, where you surface before your alarm because something in you is already listening, always scanning, always half ready to respond. I was waking up to check on my loved ones, not because something had happened, but because my body had been on alert for so long that it no longer knew how to be off duty, even in the quiet, even in the dark, even when everything was fine. And during the day, I was functioning. From the outside, I was managing. I was showing up to appointments, tracking medications, making calls, doing the admin, holding the continuity that nobody else was going to hold. But underneath that functioning, something was eroding. My digestion was off. My immune system was flagging. I was catching every virus that came near me in a way I hadn't before. My concentration was patchy in a way that scared me a little because I needed it to be sharp. My loved ones needed me to be sharp. And there was this particular kind of exhaustion that I wanted to name because I think you might know it. It wasn't physical tiredness that sleep could fix. It was the kind of tiredness that lives in your chest, that settles before your eyes, that makes even good moments feel slightly muted. Like you're watching them through glass instead of being inside them. That was my body telling me, not asking me, telling me. And I remember the moment I finally stopped long enough to listen, not because I chose to, but because I didn't have a choice anymore. My body had run out of polite ways to get my attention. And instead of stopping and asking for help the way I probably should have, my first instinct was to research my way out of it, to understand what was happening so I could fix it myself. Because asking for help, real help, the kind that admitted I was struggling, that felt like something else entirely, that felt like failing. All right, let's take that apart, because what I just described is not a personal character flaw. It is one of the most common and most costly patterns in long-term caregiving. And once you understand why it happens, you can start to work with it instead of against yourself. Why always on is not sustainable, and what it actually does to your body. When you are in a caregiving role that involves ongoing, unpredictable need, the kind where there is no clear endpoint, no shift handover, no moment where you officially clock out, your nervous system adapts. And adaptation sounds like a good thing. In the short term, it is. Your body gets very good at maintaining a state of readiness. It keeps cortisol and adrenaline at levels that help you stay alert, responsive and functional. But here is what most people don't know, and what I didn't fully understand until I started researching it for myself. Your nervous system was not designed for that state to be permanent. Cortisol and adrenaline are emergency tools. They're brilliant in a crisis. They help you think fast, move fast, respond fast. But they are expensive. Your body runs it at a cost. And when that cost is being paid continuously over months and years, without adequate recovery in between, the bill starts arriving in places you didn't expect. Your immune system gets deprioritized, your digestion slows, your sleep architecture changes. Not the depth of your sleep, but the quality of it, the restorative function of it. Your brain's ability to consolidate memory, regulate emotion, and access language under pressure all start to become less reliable. And one of the most specific things that happens, and this one I want you to hear clearly because it explains so much, is that your threat detection system becomes hypersensitive. Your brain starts reading more things as dangerous, more things as urgent, more things as requiring your immediate attention and response, which means that even in genuinely calm moments where nothing is actively wrong, your body stays braced, still scanning, still half standing. And rest stops feeling like rest because your nervous system doesn't believe it's safe to come all the way down. That is not anxiety as a personality trait. That is a physiological adaptation to an environment of sustained demand. And it is extremely common in caregivers who have been in long-term high-need roles. Your body learned to stay on, and then it forgot how to turn off. Why asking for help feels like failure, and where that belief actually comes from. So knowing all of that, why don't caregivers ask for help? Because it's not that simple. And I want to be honest about that because the standard advice of just ask for support lands completely flat if you don't understand what's underneath the resistance. Here's what I found, both in my own experience and in everything I've learned since. The first layer is identity. When you become the primary caregiver for someone you love, especially when the role starts early or starts suddenly or starts without any preparation or guidance, your identity and your caregiving role starts to fuse. Quietly, without you noticing it's happening. And when identity and role fuse, asking for help with the role starts to feel like questioning the identity. Like you're saying, I'm not sure I'm cut out for this. I'm not sure I can do it. I need someone else to step in because I am not enough. That's not a logical conclusion, but it's a felt one, and felt conclusions are far more powerful than logical ones. The second layer is the absence of a roadmap. Most caregivers, and I include myself in this completely, were never taught how to do this. There was no orientation, no transition. No one sat down and said, here is what this role involves. Here is what I will ask of you. Here is what sustainable caregiving looks like. And here is how you ask for support in a way that protects your capacity long term. You were handed a responsibility and you figured it out. You adapted. You managed. And when you've been managing something enormous with no guidance, asking for help can feel like admitting the way you've been managing it was wrong, that you should have asked sooner, that you've been doing it badly all along. You haven't. But the absence of the roadmap makes it hard to see that. The third layer, and this is the one I want to stay with for a moment, is the cost calculation your brain runs in real time. When you consider asking for help, your nervous system does a very fast, very unconscious assessment. It weighs up, what will it cost me to ask against what will it cost me to keep going alone? And for a lot of caregivers, the calculation lands wrong because the cost of asking feels immediate and visible. The vulnerability, the admission, the risk of being judged or let down or misunderstood, while the cost of not asking feels distant and abstract. Until it isn't. Until your body starts sending the invoices back. What the research told me that changed everything. When I started researching the nervous system, not as a practitioner, but as a caregiver trying to understand what was happening in my own body, something shifted in me. Something shifted for me. Because what I found wasn't just an explanation for why I felt the way I did. It was evidence. Evidence that what I was experiencing was real, measurable, and physiologically predictable. Not a personal weakness, not a failure of resilience, a biological response to a biological load. And once I had that evidence, once I understood the mechanism, I couldn't unknow it. I couldn't look at my situation and continue telling myself that the way I'd been going was fine, because the research was very clear. Sustained nervous system activation without adequate recovery doesn't plateau. It compounds, it accumulates, and the longer it goes unaddressed, the harder the recovery becomes, and the higher the risk to your long-term. That was the moment I stopped treating asking for help as a personal decision and started treating it as a strategic one. Not because I was weak, not because I couldn't manage, but because the evidence said clearly, you cannot give your loved ones your best over the long term if you're running your own system into the ground. The caregiving is a marathon, and marathons require a support structure. I want to say that again because I think it needs to land. The caregiving is a marathon, and you cannot run a marathon alone, indefinitely, without it costing you something you cannot afford to lose. What asking for help actually looked like. And why small counts. I want to be honest about what this looks like in practice because I think there's a version of asking for help that sounds big, dramatic, and impossible, and a version that is actually available to you right now. For me, it started small. Genuinely small. It was someone collecting groceries, so I didn't have to calculate whether I had enough in me for a supermarket run after an appointment. It was someone picking up a medication so I had one less errand in a week that already had too many. It was someone sitting with my loved ones for an hour. Not because there was a crisis, not because I was at the end of my rope, but just so I could have 60 minutes where I wasn't the person responsible for what happened next. Those things felt almost too small to count. My brain kept telling me they didn't really matter, that real help would look bigger, that this was just logistics. But here's what I noticed. In those small windows of not being responsible, my nervous system did something it hadn't done in a long time. It exhaled, not fully, not dramatically, but enough. One notch. And one notch repeated consistently over time is what recovery actually looks like. It's not a retreat. It's not a sabbatical. It's not a week away from everything. It's small, consistent, genuine moments of not being the only one holding it, repeated often enough that your system learns it's allowed to come down. That's what changed for me. Not one big moment of rescue, a series of small moments of relief. Over time, that built my capacity to keep going, sustainably, for the long term, for the people I love. Why being supported makes you a better caregiver, not a lesser one. I want to address the voice differently. The one that says, if I need support, I'm not doing this right. If I ask for help, I'm letting them down. If I'm struggling, it means I'm not the right person for this. Let me be clear, that voice is wrong. And I want to tell you why. When you are running on empty, your nervous system is in sustained override. When your sleep is not restorative, when your immune system is flagging and your concentration is patchy, you are not at your best for the person you love. You are present. You're managing. You're there. You are not the version of yourself that can read the situation with the most accuracy. You are not the version of yourself that can absorb new information, ask the right question, push back on the right assumption. That version of you requires capacity, and capacity requires care. Asking for support is not a withdrawal from your caregiving role. It is an investment in your ability to sustain it. And I say this as someone who was honored, genuinely deeply honored to be in that role for my loved ones and to continue that role today. It was not something I wanted to step back from. It was not a burden I was looking for permission to put down. It was something I loved, something I stepped into, something I would choose again in a heartbeat because my loved ones needed me. And it almost broke me. Not because caregiving is impossible, but because I was trying to do it without a structure that could hold the weight of it. You deserve a structure that holds the weight of it. Your loved ones deserve a version of you that has one. What changes when you stop doing it alone? I want to close the teaching section with this because I think it's the part that doesn't get said enough. When you stop doing it alone, something unexpected happens. It's not just that you feel better, though you do. It's not just that your sleep improves and your shoulders come down and the exhaustion starts to lift. Those things happen too. It's that you start to see your situation more clearly. When you're in sustained override, your perspective narrows, your threat detection is high, and your capacity for nuance is low. You're in the room, managing what's in front of you, surviving the next thing. When you have genuine support, when you're not carrying it alone, you get access to something you can't manufacture from inside the survival state. Perspective. The ability to look at your situation and see it fully, rather than just the next urgent piece of it. You start to notice patterns. You start to see what's working and what isn't. You start to ask different questions in the hard room because you have enough capacity to think past the immediate crisis. And that shift in perspective and capacity is what changes outcomes, not just for you, for your loved ones. That is what being supported actually buys you. Not rest as a reward, clarity as a tool. Let's just pause here for a moment before we close. Drop your shoulders if they've crept up. Take a breath in and exhale longer. And if something in today's episode landed, if you recognize yourself somewhere in what we talked about, I want you to just sit with that for a second. Not with judgment, just with honesty. You've been carrying a lot for a really long time. And noticing that is not weakness. It's the beginning of something different. I want to tell you about the Oasis Signature Program because this episode exists in part because of what I know it can do. The Oasis Signature is a 12-week cohort-based program where we do this work together. Deeply, with structure, with community, and with me directly. It is for caregivers who are past the point of just needing information, who already know they're exhausted, who already know something has to change, who are ready for something that goes beyond a podcast episode or a toolkit, something that actually transforms how they move through this long-term role. Over 12 weeks, we work through the patterns that keep caregivers stuck in override, the identity beliefs, the resistance to support, the nervous system habits, the advocacy gaps, and we build something more sustainable together in a cohort of people who understand your experience because they are living it too. This is not a course you buy and watch alone. This is a live, structured, supported experience with me and with others who are in the same season. If you've been in this caregiving role for any length of time and you've recognized yourself in what we've talked about today, the always on, the body sending signals, the quiet decision to stop asking for help. Oasis Signature is built for exactly that moment, the moment after you decide something has to change and you're ready to find out what that actually looks like. It's $1,497. The link is in the show notes. And if you have questions before you join, reach out. I want to make sure it's the right fit for you before you commit. You've been showing up for everyone else for a long time. This is what showing up for yourself looks like. All right, let's wrap this episode up gently. If you've stopped asking for help, if somewhere along the way it started to feel like failure or weakness or a contradiction of the role you chose, I want you to hear this clearly. That is one of the most predictable and most common things that happens in long-term caregiving. It is not a character flaw. It is a pattern, and patterns can be changed. Today, we named what sustained override actually does to your body. Not as a warning, but as evidence that what you've been feeling is real and measurable and makes complete sense. We named the 3 layers of resistance that keep caregivers from asking for help. And we talked about what changes for you and for the people you love when you finally let yourself be supported. Your next small step is this. Name one thing, just one, that you have been carrying alone that someone else could carry with you. You don't have to act on it today, just name it. Let your brain have the thought without immediately dismissing it. And if you're ready for something more, if this episode landed and you're ready to stop doing it alone in a real and structured way, Oasis Signature program is linked in the show notes. I'll see you in the next episode. Hello, caregiver to caregiver. If today's episode supported you, even in a small way, would you share it with another caregiver who's holding it together in hard rooms too? And if you have a quick moment, leaving a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify really helps us reach more caregivers who need calmer days, clearer words, and practical support. I'll see you right back here next time for another episode. I'm Michelle, and this is Nervous System Reset for Caregivers. No pressure, no perfect routines, and no toxic positivity. Just one gentle reset and one practical next step. Until next time, take gentle care of your radiant moments and of yourself.